Oh, hi! So this video, we are going to be doing another twin bed bench. This one is different. I feel like they're all kind of different in how you use them. But I found this bench or these twin beds and that little chair in like kind of the junkyard section of a thrift store up the road from my mom's house. It was just sitting outside in the weather. They're all kind of warped, so we're gonna try our best with this and see what comes of it, but I think we can make something awesome. So I'm just kind of breaking down the foot rails. They are too short to actually use for the bench in this case, and I knew that when I got it. That's why I got both. It's two twin beds. These are vintage, they're not antique, so I don't really feel bad about them. They just had regular metal side rails. So here I'm measuring to make sure that I can get this wide enough. So what I'm going to do is flip one of the headboards and split it down the middle-ish. So I'm measuring it out, and then they'll be used as kind of the armrest situation. So kind of what I do is I do the height and the depth of the seated area is around 17 to 18 inches. So there's a standard kind of within there, and I know that that's just kind of stuck in my brain that I want it to be about 17 or 18 inches. This one I did go a little bit higher just because of the design that it already was. I do tend to try and work with the pieces that I get, and since this one kind of looked like it was going to be a bit taller, it was a little bit higher of a bench than the last one that I did, and probably higher than the next one that I will do. But it's something to think about as you're kind of going along and using what you find. So as you can see, I cut that kind of in half-ish, and of course I saved that one little spindle because you know how I love me some spindles. And now I'm measuring out how deep I want the bench to seat. So however deep this is, you know that your bench seat is going to be at least that deep, but probably a little bit more based on how much of a lip you have with your planks hanging off the edge, which will make more sense as we go along here. But so since I cut it with the jigsaw, as you can see, I'm just taking a little chop saw and getting really straight lines because my jigsaw skills are lacking. And then as you can see here, it doesn't look good attached like that. So all I'm doing is lining up the lower area where it drops down on the back side of the bench, or what will be the back side of the bench. And then I'm going to arc that up and make a cut there so that I can get it to look decent when it's put together. And so all I do is I made the mark. I'm going to make the cut with my jigsaw. I'm going to go a little more smooth on this round so it's a better cut. And then just get that so that when I line it up with the back side of the bench, it will look kind of more cohesive instead of just an abrupt stop. And then that will be sanded out, and as soon as we paint it, you'll never know that it happened. And so here, to get the exact same marking, I'm taking the piece that I cut off the other side, lining it up with this side, and I will mark that out and then make that same cut so that they are the same on both sides. And then I'm just going to be taking my little pocket holder. This is the mini one. It's the smallest one you can get. You guys, I use this thing all the time. It is so incredible, super inexpensive. I highly recommend it. One day I'll get the larger one that clamps down and makes your life quite a bit easier, but for now this is great because, like I said, I've been at my mom's house and I just can bring my wagon of tools and do everything kind of wherever I'm at, like a traveling circus. But so I'm doing pocket hole screws everywhere, along with wood glue to make sure that this is fully attached everywhere. This could potentially be an indoor or an outdoor bench, so I just want to make sure that it's sturdy and held well together, and it'll be good for the elements as well. Of course, I wouldn't recommend putting this in direct weather, but under like a front porch or something would be super cute, and I'm kind of designing it for that or an entryway bench. Then I'm just kind of lining these up here, and as you can see, the back side, it just drops down and just looks so much better. So here's some Gorilla Wood glue. I use this interchangeably with my Titebond 2. My Titebond Quick and Thick. I would say that this Gorilla Glue is in between Titebond 2 and Titebond Quick and Thick. So depending on your application, kind of depends on what kind of glue you want to use. Sometimes it doesn't matter, but sometimes it does. As you can see, I was making sure that I covered the complete surface of the wood with the glue so that there's no gaps or anything. So I'm getting good adhesion. And then I'm just using this level here to make sure that everything is going to be level and lined up. And because I don't have 6 hands, I'm using a clamp to hold it up there while I get this going. Now that that's all situated, I am using my drill to just screw in the pocket hole screws. With this, you do actually use pocket hole screws. They're a specific kind of screw. They work really well. You just want to make sure you get the kind for the specific wood that you're using. Like they have ones for hardwoods and softwoods and things like that. And then of course the thickness, obviously. So these are the footboards that I had taken the legs off of, which obviously I saved the legs. I'm just taking off that extra piece there. I did it with the saw. And I'm using these as the bracer board in the front. So it will also be attached with the pocket hole screws and some glue, and kind of the same process. And you just wanted to measure that to make sure that it fit in perfectly. This one obviously did because it's meant to go with this bed. So it was the same width and everything. And then to make this side a little bit easier on me, again, one person, don't have too many hands. I laid it on its side so that I could get it on here and just make it a little bit easier for me to attach. And then it's the same process for the other side, only I didn't have to flip it onto its side because it was already being held up by the left side. So super easy once you get it kind of going and started. Now I'm just taking this piece of scrap wood and I'm using it as kind of a little lip to lay the planks on for the seat. Since the bottom brace is going to work as that in the front, I needed something in the back that was the same height. So I'm adding this little bit on. It's going to act as a kind of an anchor point because I'm going to be taking my airstrike and I can nail down into this through the planks, and then also I can go from the back so that they're doubly secured on the back side of the bench. So this again was done with a pocket hole screw on either side, and in addition to that, I'm also going to be using the nailer to nail it up through the top so it's super secure as well. Did I mention I added glue? Also glue. Glue, pocket hole screws, and the nail gun. So this thing's in there. Now, since I'm using reclaimed wood for this, these are old trim pieces. There are nails sticking out of them, so I do have to take a little extra time and go through and remove all the nails. But once that's done, I can just go through and cut these all to size, and I've got a ton of free wood for the finish of this bench. So no glue for this part because I want to allow for expansion and contraction in the wood, and just using the nails will be enough to hold these pieces down. So for the front, I'm just shooting directly down into the bracer board, and that's holding them all into place. That way I can, when I go to do the back, they're secured in that spot. And as you can see, I'm holding them down in the back as well and making sure that I'm getting them in the direct spot that I need them to be in. So then in the back here, I'm shooting into the ends of the wood through the back part. And then I will also be going through and shooting down as well, like I did to the front, but also to the back. So these guys are on here. They're not going anywhere, even though I didn't use glue. As you can see, I have a little kind of clamp brace on there. It was a little bit wobbly because the wood, like I said, was warped. But once I get it clamped on and kind of let it sit, it'll stop doing that because it'll go back into the spot that, it needs to be. Oh, and fun trick that I learned from Angie from Transcend Furniture Gallery. If your clamps are not long enough, you can hook two together. Brilliant. I've used this trick so much since I saw it on her channel, and that girl is a rock star, so check her out if you haven't already. But yeah, so now that those have sat overnight, I can take them off and, oh, it's sturdy again. Back to where it needs to be. It's good stuff. So after testing it out, I'm going to give it a good sand. So I'm just going over, smoothing out the top, kind of making sure that nothing's sticking out too much. And then I'm going to run over the edges on this so that as your legs hang over, there's obviously nothing kind of poking you or anything like that. You just want to make sure that the surface where your knees hit or hang over the edge feels, good-ish to the touch. It's never going to feel perfect because this isn't a cushioned bench, it's a planked bench, but you don't want anybody to get splinters or regret buying something from you, so sand away. And then I'm going to just take this cleaner that my parents had lying around and clean everything up so that I can get some paint on here and get it looking good. Once clean, I'm going to go in with some light khaki and just cover all of the main frame of the wood. This is going to be distressed, so I don't have to do anything too crazy on it. It's going to get 2-ish coats. It's more like a coat, and then wherever I think it needs some more, I'll go over those spots, because to me it's just silly to make sure that you have a perfect paint job if you're going to go over and distress it, because I want this to look fairly rustic. So I'm not making sure that it's too smooth or too perfect or any of that. And then I'm going to do a wash on the planks, just so that you can still see the grain in those. But because it's cedar on the bench, I feel like cedar is just a little bit too reddish pink than I like. So I'm going to do a bit of a wash. And what's perfect about the light khaki is it has kind of like almost a green undertone that will counter any of the reddish hues that come out of the wood. So that is a really fun trick to use instead of doing a white wash. If you do a khaki wash, as you know, I'm a Chalk Mountain ambassador, so all these colors are in reference to Chalk Mountain colors. So yeah, khaki, great wash to use for red toned woods. So I felt like this needed just a little something extra. So I'm just taking a stencil and some iron gate. I didn't want anything too much of a contrast, so the khaki with the iron gate is kind of a mid-tone gray, almost a charcoal, but not quite as dark. And I'm just adding a little something to give a little more interest. I felt like it just looked a little too plain in the back. So to do my stenciling, I make sure that my brush is mostly dry. I'll dip a little bit of paint on the tip of the brush and then I'll pounce it off in the lid. And then sometimes when I go to redip, I'll just redip out of the lid to make sure that it's dry as I'm putting it on my stencil so that you don't have any bleed through. And like I said, I'm distressing this piece, and I'm not doing it too gently either. Like, I wanted this to look old and well loved. So while I'm doing that, I am just hitting kind of the edges of things to bring out the design of the spindles and everything like that, and then heavier on areas that would actually have been more worn, like where you'd rest your arms or your back and things like that. And then I also went over the stencil as well because I don't want that to look brand new. Now I'm sealing in this poly. This is Minwax Semi-Gloss. Not my favorite. I'm just going to say that right now. Not because it's not a good product, but because I don't typically love semi-gloss. I usually use my satin, and that's kind of my go-to. or wax, because those are my favorite finishes. But as I said, I was at my parents' house. This is what they had there. I just brought wax to finish things with because I find that it's easier for me to travel with. But I knew that since I was doing this, it needed to be finished well enough to be placed outside on somebody's porch or indoors where people were going to be taking off their shoes and kind of really using it. So I wanted to make sure it was something a little more durable than wax. So this is what we have. And I didn't know I was going to be making this when I got there. So I hope you guys really like this. I hope you learned something. Here's the finished result. I think it is just darling. And hey, I've got something really cool coming up on the 25th. It's a huge collaborations with a bunch of other YouTubers that I'm super excited about. It's going to be a $100 challenge. So stick around for that, like, subscribe, and I'll see you guys next week.